euthanasia. And doing my research, I found that the Greek word for euthanasia means good death. And he's also has called for universal health care. So I know he was a big fan of the health care bill that passed recently in the White House. Again, we're here with Wayne Madsen of WayneMadsenReport.com. Wayne's live in Washington, D.C. Wayne, Rahm Emanuel's influence in national politics, how did he become so powerful, so revered by many of those in Washington, D.C.? We recall he's been chief of staff twice, once under President Clinton, and then more recently with President Obama. He was a U.S. representative of the 5th District in Chicago, a big-time political player. How did he rise to power in national politics?
Well, he started out as a campaign worker on various Democratic campaigns, most of them presidential campaigns back in the 80s. The John Glenn campaign, the Paul Simon campaign in Illinois when they were running for president. He turned that into an entree to national politics. When Clinton was elected president, he winds up in a job in the White House, but immediately went at loggerheads with the First Lady, Hillary Clinton, who basically tried to have him fired. He wasn't fired. He was lateraled over. He worked for Mac McLarty, the chief of staff at the White House. And then in the late 90s, towards the end of the Clinton administration, he left the White House and got a job with this big Wall Street investment firm, Wasserstein Perella, where he made $16 million, which, of course, helped fund his future run for the U.S. Congress. So he's definitely been a player ever since. As a U.S. congressman, he made it quite clear he wanted to become Speaker of the House. Of course, that didn't happen when Obama, during the campaign in 2008, because of his ties to Clinton, even though he didn't like Hillary Clinton, he was still considered very close to Bill Clinton. He was neutral in that primary for a long time. Nobody really knew where he was going, but when Obama started to win in caucuses and certain primaries, of course, then Emanuel decided he was going to go with the winner, the perceived winner, and he announced that he was supporting Obama, and then of course the rest is history. He winds up as the chief of staff. He's not very well liked here in Washington. He was known. He was actually feared by the Democrats and Republicans on the Hill as somebody who was, basically just nuts. He once sent a dead fish to a political opponent. He once took a steak knife and stabbed it in a table and said, "This one dead, dead, dead," about certain people he was, opposed to. So again, we get back into this Sopranos type thing. The guy's definitely made no friends here in Washington. We had a strange incident with ex-Democratic representative from New York, Eric Massa, who said that Obama confronted him in the shower naked in the House of Representatives over some legislation.
Category tonight, this is an interesting one. Top 10 signs that Rahm Emanuel is nuts. Rahm Emanuel is the guy who's running President Obama's White House staff. Yes. He's his buddy. He's his main man. He's the guy that takes care of everything. He's the brains behind the machine. Category, top 10 signs he's nuts. You know what this is all about?
No, what is this?
New York congressman says he was confronted in a gym shower by a naked White House chief of staff, Rahm Emanuel, because he wasn't going to vote for the president's budget.
Really?
So I'm not sure here. I guess were they both naked? Were one of them just naked? Anyway, it seemed inappropriate that a guy would be naked, and so.
Punched him. Basically took his finger and punched him in the chest with his finger. And Massa said that Emanuel's the kind of person that would strap his own mother onto the front of a locomotive to further his political career. And definitely what I've seen and heard of about Emanuel here would support that contention.
Now, with Rahm Emanuel wanting to become mayor of Chicago, obviously he has ties to Mayor Daley and the Daley political machine. I also like to call it the Chicago Democratic machine. How did he become friends and ally with Mayor Daley? And I also wanted to get your thoughts on William Daley, who was the Midwest chief of J.P. Morgan Chase, now becoming the new chief of staff in Washington, D.C. Do you think there was a backroom deal between Obama, Emanuel, and Mayor Daley?
I think there's a lot of backroom deals between the machine in Chicago and the White House. It's not just between Rahm Emanuel and the two Daleys, Richard Daley and William Daley, who's taking basically his old job over as chief of staff. You've also got all those other players, that whole pickup basketball crowd, Arnie Duncan and Alexei Giannoulias. You've got also remember Michelle Obama, the first lady, and her financial connections to Valerie Jarrett, and Valerie Jarrett was basically running the show here in the absence of a very strong chief of staff. That may change with Daley, Bill Daley coming in.
You talk about just the whole Chicago influence coming into Washington, D.C. David Axelrod coming from Chicago. Arnie Duncan, we obviously seen what he's done with the Chicago Public Schools, now the head of the Department of Education. Valerie Jarrett. It all ties in as well to that 2016 Olympic bid. It seemed like a lot of people in the daily political machine in Chicago were set to make big profits with the Olympics coming to Chicago.
Oh yeah, so Valerie Jarrett is involved in all these brownfields and this public land that they picked up for dirt cheap that would have been the venue for like the Olympic Village and other sports venues for the 2016 Olympics. And let's not forget Michael Scott, who was the head of the Chicago School Board, who was also a real estate investor in this whole operation, but he was found floating in the Chicago River with a bullet in his head.
Mr. Scott, you done sold the community out, Mr. Scott. You sold the community out. You sold us out. You sold us out. You sold us out, Mr. Scott. Because you're giving false information. Wait, I was back there. I was asking this. Well, give me the right information right now. Give me the right information. Give me the right information right now. Meet with you. Well, give me the right information. Make sure you bring some cameras with that one too, all right?
The county medical examiner has ruled the death of Chicago Public School Board President Michael Scott a suicide, but police are calling it simply a death investigation. An autopsy found Scott died of a self-inflicted gunshot to the head. Police officers were called to the banks of the Chicago River early this morning after someone spotted a body. A car registered to Scott was found in a nearby lot.
They try to say it was suicide, but my experience with that type of thing here in politics in this town is when it looks like suicide, it usually isn't. It's assisted suicide at the very least. So Obama wings over to on Air Force One to Copenhagen to try to wrest control of the Olympics and give it to Chicago, when in fact they already knew that Brazil, which South America never having had an Olympics before, that Brazil was favored. Brazil had that thing wired, but nevertheless they threw good money after bad. Obama goes over there on some very bad advice, trying to get the Olympics. It did not happen. And here, we have the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago bankrupt, but they took this money that could have been spent on other things on this wild goose chase, trying to get the Olympics for Chicago. This was to